I'm not perfect, God, neither are you. Tell these salty motherfuckers to tell the truth. Tell politicians to give up the rooms. Tell silent voters to stand up to the booth.
God, it's me. Can you hear my plea? Feeling like I'm lost in this world, can't you see? Demons creeping in, trying to take control of me. But I'm just trying to find the light, trying to break free. I'm not perfect, God, neither are you. But why you keep forgetting me? What did I do? Trying to have a convo, but you starting to preach. Feeling like I'm on a leash. Can't find no peace. Living in hell, can't you hear my plea? I'm suffocating, can't you see? Why you let these false prophets roam free? While the will run suffer, can't you see? I'm not perfect, God, neither are you. Why you keep targeting me? What did I do? Trying to have a convo, but you starting to preach. Feel like I'm on a leash, can't find no peace.
Hardest battles, strongest soldiers, greatest burden, broadest shoulders, pushing up just like these boulders. This conflict like it's water, so this mercy, take my chalice, seeking grace through all this malice. All of these salty motherfuckers to give out.
Politics and sinners, they all the same. Got me stuck in this endless game. But I won't give up, won't play the role. Gotta do what's best
for my soul.
I'm not perfect, God. Neither are you. Tell these salty motherfuckers to tell the truth. Tell these politicians to give up the room. Tell silent voters to stand up to the booth. Living wild but truthfully free. God keep on watching over me. Take my pleas and keep.
Good morning. It's Monday. You already know what we do. We're getting independent music. This is 777 by Don Tripp, and I'll be right back right after this.
Yeah. I see Lucky 7. Yeah. I don't know what the fuck you seeing me. I don't know what the fuck you seeing me. Yeah. Did you read the terms or conditions for you signed? I guess that's why they tell us love is blind. It's such a maze inside this broken mind of mine. I know it's hard work, but you've given it overtime. I don't know what it mean when they say apple of my eye, but I know every day of our lives ain't gonna be sweet as pie. If it's me against the world, I'm lucky you on my side. Like when Bunny laid eyes on Clyde the first time. If I could go back in time and press rewind, I would choose you 1,000 times. I added you to my life and then we multiplied. No matter what, I won't let us divide. Yeah, I'm sure you got a better place to be. I can't even blame you if you flee. Be careful not to cut yourself on all my broken pieces. I just don't know what the fuck you see in me, but I see Lucky 7s. Yeah, don't know what the fuck you see in me. I see Lucky 7s. I don't know what the fuck you see in me. Don't know what the fuck you see in me. I see Lucky 7s. I don't know what the fuck you see in me. I had 3 baby mamas when we met. I'll be honest with myself, that's a lot to accept, that's a lot to endure, that's a lot to digest. You accepted my flaws and brought a mop to my mess. You deserve an award for that, a round of applause for that. I put up a wall to guard my heart and it all collapsed. No matter what people say, as long as we go be great, we living in living color until we both old and gray. I ain't perfect, you aware. Opposites do attract, if so, we a perfect pair. Nothing lasts forever, still ain't nothing they can tell us, cause Mariah told us we belong together. Yeah, and I'm sure you got a better place to be. I can't even blame you if you leave. Be careful not to cut yourself on all my broken pieces. I just wonder what the fuck you see in me. 'Cause I see lucky sevens. Don't know what the fuck you see in me. I see lucky sevens. I just wonder what the fuck you see in me.
Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. I want to start this off today. I want to talk about, I always talk about Minnesota, but I want to talk about truth buried, pocket fat Democrats, and dirty laundry. And really, to be honest, this came out this morning, and it's the Quarantine Podcast featuring mayoral candidate from Minneapolis, Laverne Turner. And he gets into some very good topics that I feel like that need to be heard. And so with all that being said, here goes Laverne Turner on Quarantine Podcast.
About this. All right. So
Make sure y'all.
Everybody's feeling good, but we're going to talk about the corruption in the Democratic power structure in Minnesota. And you know better than anyone how corrupt this is. A beautiful state. Right. Snow sucks, but it's a beautiful state. So tell us about some of this corruption we're seeing in Minnesota, Minneapolis.
Well, I mean, if anybody's been paying attention to the news lately, when you have Attorney General Keith Ellison potentially being a part of the Feeding Our Future scandal, fraud scandal, Senator Bobby Joe Champion, and his blurring the lines of his legal practice versus advocacy and policy with the state and his nonprofit allies, and then you have sort of the Minneapolis situation with the violence interrupters and the contracts, and what happened with one of the groups getting their contract revoked because of a violence interrupter being shot at and shooting back at someone. There's a lot of mess going on in Minneapolis, right? I don't even think I've even mentioned the crime is still tremendously high. Violent crime is still extremely high. And you have Jacob Fry, the current mayor, also running to be reelected, going around campaigning, saying that everything is great and crime is going down and making it seem like, Minneapolis is on the rise, lying his ass off. And the media covers for people like that. And it's the people who live here know that Minneapolis is not improving, but it's like doing a presidential election when Biden and Kamala was trying to run against Trump or whatever, and the national narrative was, oh, the economy's doing fine, everything is great, prices aren't that high, or inflation is transitory, all that, but even though in real life, everyday people are realizing, hey, I can't pay my rent, I can't get no food, I can't get gas for my car, I can't pay my bills. But the media is telling us everything is hunky-dory. And it's sort of the same thing with, here in Minneapolis with Jacob Fry's leadership in I call them the communist city council, because most of the members, I think 4 out of 5, maybe even 6 members of the city council are of the DSA, which means the Democrat Socialist Party or something, whatever they call it, DSA, Democratic Socialist Party. They are ruining Minneapolis. And the media is covering for them, and making it easy for them to lie to us.
Yo. Yeah, you can go into how corrupt everything has been. I mean, I had someone yesterday tell me that Trump put us into a recession. I'm like, we've been in a recession. Like, where are you at? Why are you worried about egg prices when Joe Biden killed over 200 million chickens? Like, and gave Trump the keys to the White House, and then they're like, egg prices. I'm like, You can't just throw this on someone. You can't drop 20 million illegals into a place and be like, it's your problem now. And if they try to find the solution, you're racist.
I mean, that's sort of the whole hypocrisy or intellectual disingenuousness that comes from the left. I mean, because, you know, like I said earlier, just a few minutes ago, when Biden and Kamala were in power or whatever, Democrats were saying everything was great and fine, even though American people, they were suffering. And now Trump is in, now everything is bad. Nothing's really changed. I talk to my wife every day, and I'm like, hey, you know about the tariff war and all that kind of stuff, and a looming recession because of Trump and the tariffs and all this kind of talk. Nothing has changed since Trump has been in office, and that's not a bad thing. We have to give him time to get his policies to work, and all his policies haven't been instituted yet because we're still trying to pass his tax bill. So without the tax bill, the whole plan is still sort of in limbo because we need that tax deal to go along with the tariffs and all the executive orders. You know, we need that as a package, okay? And if one of those things are missing, the package isn't going to work. But my point is, now Democrats are trying to act like Trump is the one that put us in this position. You know, now eggs are too high. Yeah, you know, nothing has changed since Trump took over. So if things were high now, they had to have been high before. But now you want to blame Trump for it when he's not the cause of it. And then what really sickens me is when sort of our Minnesota State legislature, they are blaming all their overspending and blowing that $19 billion surplus on Donald Trump.
Yo.
How's that? What kind of logic is that? How can you do that? Now you want to say, oh, because of Donald Trump, we got to cut budgets and we got to raise taxes and he's hurting our economy. He's hurting, the state of Minnesota. No, I think you wasting that $19 billion surplus is what's hurting Minnesota.
Yep.
And then they conflate issues like, Trump demanding that federal workers go back to the office, right? Right?
Oh, yeah.
But what's his name? Tim Walz does the same thing here in Minnesota, telling state workers they got to go back to the office 50% of the time, but they want to blame Trump for that?
Yeah.
I don't understand how these people think or what world do they live in.
I think when I try to describe the left to people through my perspective is they don't understand hypocrisy. And the thing that I always find funny is this is one tell that you can always, if there's a Republican president, Mount Rushmore is racist. But if it's a Democrat in office, then no, it's patriotic. Do you ever notice that?
Yeah, and it's unfortunate that we live in. No, don't get me wrong. I've been around politics for a very long time. I've seen sort of the nastiness of the partisanship on both sides over the decades. But I have to be honest. I think today's environment is something that I've never seen before, and I think it's actually dangerous to the country because now it's so based on my side versus your side, sort of almost like a semi-tribal community where if you don't agree with someone, then you're not a patriot and believe in what you believe in. Now you're evil. You're we have to hate you. You're the enemy. There used to be a time where you could have an opposing opinion and still be considered a patriot and maybe say some nasty things about each other, but not make people mortal enemies like you want to kill someone and advocating violence against someone. That's a whole other level. Don't get me wrong. I know American history. The Boston Tea Party in the American Revolution, that was sort of based on political violence to a degree. You know what I mean? But we're supposed to be an evolved, civilized society in the 21st century. How are we reverting from the age of Martin Luther King of what is it, nonviolent protesting, how does nonviolent protesting go to violent protesting and still just being called nonviolent protesting? You know, I don't.
Yeah. No, you're right. It's become completely tribal. But I side with the Republicans. I don't consider myself a Republican. I'm independent because I think a lot of the Republicans are just as a lot of the Republicans are just rhinos, and that's the fact of the matter. So when I see people, like, I can have a conversation with anybody. I don't believe 100% in conservatism. There's a lot of stuff that I don't out of that. But I think that's the most logical way to advance society, obviously, because what are we doing now? They say abort your kids. So everyone, abortion, if you're against it, you're evil. Okay, fine. So then they're like, oh, you're having too many kids. You're having too many kids, blah, blah, blah. So what do? They basically make it so expensive that you can't afford to have kids. And then at the same time, they're all like, there's too many people. We're overpopulated, yet we're bringing in 20 million illegals, you know, and we can get into the replacement theory, which is racist. But fact of the matter is, it's not saying a particular race of people. It's saying American citizens are being replaced with people who are working for slave wages that are coming over here and can send the money right back to their family, where they can eventually leave and become kings of their country. And I think that's ridiculous. I think when Bill Clinton put us into the China into the World Trade Organization, that was a bad move. But now that it's all happening and we're at this situation, you can kind of see, like, this is what started that. Because now you have people that are like, we don't got to manufacture here and give someone a livable wage and give them health care. We can just ship it overseas. They can work for slave labor, pennies on the dollar, and then they can ship it back and we can make millions. And I think that was more, I know the Republicans were all about that. Democrats are about that. So I feel like they're tribal in a way, but I feel like nobody really cares. I mean, a handful of people really care. The rest of them are just, you know.
No, I hear your sentiment. I understand. I hear what you're saying. I'm a Republican, but I'm the type of person who I have no problem disagreeing or calling out my party when I don't agree with them. And I'll be the first one to say, at least Republicans in Minnesota are extremely incompetent. They don't know what they're doing, and it's funny because, you know, I'm a Republican, and I'm gonna say this as humbly as possible. I do know Republicans from other parts of the country, and the rap on Minnesota Republicans is most Republicans outside of Minnesota don't think Minnesota Republicans are Republicans. They don't even consider them Republicans.
I don't think they're Republicans. I mean, I don't think anything about Minnesota is Republican. I think it's mini California, and we don't have the nice weather to be dealing with all the bullshit we get. Right. You know, like.
I mean, you know, but I am a Republican. I love my party. I love the platform. I love Republican history in this country. You know what I mean? Yeah. Abraham Lincoln, right? On that note, but here in Minnesota, it only really matters in times like this in history where we're at a pivotal point in American history. If Trump wouldn't have won this last election, my honest opinion is there wouldn't have been in America the way as we knew it. You know, it would have been part of the globalist world, the one global order, and we would have lost all of our nationalism, individual nationalism. And with Trump winning, we have a chance to kind of bring our country back from the verge of that one world society, that one world order, globalization thing. And talking about the replacement theory and the restart, and all the little things that people talk about in political circles from the political class. But we are at a point where I feel that this country is in a battle for its morality, right? Like, you know, nothing is sacred in America anymore. Nothing is bad. No one gets a chance. No one gets held accountable for their actions. No one has to take responsibility for their actions. When the state legislature of Minnesota passes a law where youth, children as young as 5, 6, 7 years old.
What the hell is going on? Okay. Wow. I do not know what the hell just happened. I totally don't. Wow. That's insane. I just rumbled, like totally went down. Wow. That was weird. There's something wrong with that. Let's see my feed. Yeah, man, that was weird. Let's see where I don't even know where I was at. I was like at 20 minutes, I think, on the show.
Patriotic. Do you ever notice that?
Yeah, and it's unfortunate that we live in. No, don't get me wrong. I've been around politics a very long time.
What the hell happened?
I've seen sort of the nastiness of the partisanship on both sides over the decades. But I have to be honest. I think today's environment is something that I've never seen before, and I think it's actually.
Like right here.
I do know Republicans from other parts of the country, and the rap on Minnesota Republicans is most Republicans outside of Minnesota don't think Minnesota Republicans are Republicans. They don't even consider them Republicans.
I don't think they're Republicans. I mean, I don't think anything about Minnesota is Republican. I think it's mini California, and we don't have the nice weather to be dealing with all the bullshit we get. Like.
I mean, I am a Republican. I love my party. I love the platform. I love Republican history in this country. You know what I mean? Yeah. Abraham Lincoln, right? On that note. But here in Minnesota, it only really matters in times like this in history where we're at a pivotal point in American history. If Trump wouldn't have won this last election, my honest opinion is there wouldn't have been in America the way as we knew it. Yeah. It would have been part of the globalist world, the one global order, and we would have lost all of our nationalism, individual nationalism. And with Trump winning, we have a chance to kind of bring our country back from the verge of that one world society, that one world order, globalization thing. And talking about the replacement theory and the restart, and all the little things that people talk about in political circles from the political class. But we are at a point where I feel that this country is in a battle for its morality, right? Like, nothing is sacred in America anymore. Nothing is bad. No one gets a chance. No one gets held accountable for their actions.
Right.
No one has to take responsibility for their actions. When the state legislature of Minnesota passes a law where youth, children as young as 5, 6, 7 years old can get sex changes, or what they call transgender health care, without their parents
and
knowing
their
or even
affirmative
having
care.
to give consent. I think that's some evil stuff right there. You know what I mean? Like,
True.
that's what the kind of society that we're on the verge of. When you have Minnesota State Legislature again passing abortion up to 9 months and after birth.
Right.
I mean, after birth, that's not abortion, that's murder. I mean, it's
Right.
murder, period, but it's what they call it, infanticide, killing, you know.
Yep.
And then also Minnesota State Legislature trying to pass making pedophilia a protected class.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, bro, you tell me that does not sound like evil shit to you?
Well, like I said, that's why I think it's so evil.
Transgender, with the women, with the men and women's sports, isn't that you know?
Right.
Something's wrong with that, right?
Oh, of course there is. But no Republican's gonna stand up against that.
Right.
I mean, you might, and a few have. No, well, I mean, as far as Minnesota Republicans, when I say Republicans, I strictly mean
like
Minnesota, just because we're both from Minnesota and
because they're not going to win.
They'll complain about it. Right. Trust me, you know, I'm in all the social media stuff with all my, you know, Republican friends. They'll complain about it. Let's organize a rally and blah blah blah, all that kind of stuff. Right. But the what remains is that we don't have enough legislatures in the state house to change anything. Right. We just came off a period where the DFL had their trifecta, where they passed all this insane stuff. This past election, we were able to tie the House. Right. Okay, so there's a little bit of power shift, but not a lot. Right. You know, it's balanced. It's 67 or 66, 66, whatever it is. So it's a stalemate. Nothing's getting passed, which I think at this point is a good thing. As long as they're not doing anything else, that's fine. But Republicans don't have the power because they can't get people elected in other places other than outstate Minnesota, right? Or the outer rim suburbs, right? Yeah. They don't. I'm going back to why I say the Minnesota Republicans are incompetent, because you know politics is math, right? Numbers. Okay? Yeah. And if you want to win a statewide election and Minneapolis, St. Paul metro area pretty much has 65%, maybe even 70% of the state's vote power. Right? Yep. But you think you can win elections by only campaigning and catering to rural Minnesota. Right. Yep. You're never gonna win because you ain't got the numbers. I don't care if rural Minnesota votes at 90% red or Republican. Right. There's still not enough numbers there to compete with Minneapolis and St. Paul.
No, there's not.
Period.
Point that out.
Yep. So why don't Republicans campaign in Minneapolis and St. Paul? Why do they say it's a waste of time, it's a waste of money? Why would you say that?
I forget who said this, but they are saying like when you're going out there and you're trying to get people to vote for you, when you go to rural areas, you can see like there's houses that are sometimes a half a mile apart from each other. As for if you were to go to the city, get into an apartment, you can literally hit up every single door just steps away. Right. And you can do that over and over. Mm-hmm. And the one thing I remember you running on was they need to legalize weed and shit. Well, they did that, but they're failing as far as putting up stores. Right. But I thought that was a big thing because weed shouldn't be illegal, and I was like, that's really dope. And that's one of the things like conservatives would go against that. Like if I were someone like Trump, I'd be like, we're gonna legalize it federally, like everyone can smoke a doobie, you know. And those are winning points. Yeah, like those are winning points, and we don't run with those. But you look at the Democrats who always take the 20%, 20-80 thing on issues where 80% disagree but 20% agree, but somehow they keep getting reelected. And I mean, I understand Minnesota.
Democrats do a better job of what I'm complaining about the Republicans is. What I was saying earlier is that by not by refusing to campaign to the 4th and 5th CDs, Minneapolis, St. Paul suburban area, refusing not to politically invest in those areas of the state,
Right.
you're pretty much just handing victories to the Democrats, because at least the Democrats, they might have a lot of stuff that a lot of people say that they don't agree with, but they politically invest in that area. They politically invest in that area. Whether you agree with them or not, if they're the only game in town, you want to play, what you gonna do?
Right.
Yep.
True.
So until Republicans get the message that you got to politically invest in Minneapolis, St. Paul, in the 5th and 6th CDs, them talking about winning a statewide election, it's a wet dream. It's nothing.
Yep.
It's a fantasy, because you're not being serious about this. You're not being serious. You know why Trump did well in the third election? Because what he did well in demographics that Republicans traditionally say you can't improve in, you can't do well in. Black people aren't going to vote for you, Trump. Right. Trump proved them wrong.
Yep.
So why can't they learn a lesson from Trump and be like, hey, if Trump can get more black people in urban areas, why can't we do that here in Minnesota? And
I think it's because of the rhinos. Like, I really don't think the rhinos are trying to win. And I mean, I could look at it a bunch of different ways, but at the end of the day, they're not going to do anything different than what Democrats would do, in my opinion. And I know that's a lot of pushback on the Republicans, which I only do because I believe in the Republicans.
But it's warranted, though. It's merited, though.
Right.
Because,
yeah.
You know, my opinion is, the situation that Minnesota is in now, Minneapolis and the rest of the state is in now, what we're dealing with now as a state, as an individual state, with Tim Walz as governor and some of the legislation that I said that was passed in this last trifecta power grab by the Democrats.
Right.
Republicans made that happen. Over 40 years, over 40 years of telling Minneapolis and St. Paul this.
Oh, right.
Right? They gave the middle finger to the inner city for 40 years. If you ignore, and people, when you ignore voters and they hear you say, oh, there's no way I can win in Minneapolis, there's no Republican can win, why waste your time and money? You are already telling people that you don't care about them.
That you don't care about them, right?
Yeah.
Good point.
You're making it too easy for people to say, hey, Republicans don't even want to come here, they don't want to campaign here.
Right.
I guess I might as well vote for the Democrats because they're the only ones here. You know, like, it's by default. There's no one else to vote for. And then the Democrats are slick. They politically, when I say politically invest, I mean they pay people to go and campaign for them, right? Yeah. They spend money in the hood to regular people who are willing to door knock and drop lead and, try to put up signs in people's yard. They invest in the area. You might not even like the Democrat, but if he's going to pay you $25 an hour to let drop, you can make a couple $100 in a day or 2 days. Who's going to turn that down? You know what I mean? Like, So until Republicans want to politically invest and financially invest politically in Minneapolis, St. Paul, the 4th and 5th CD, they will never, ever win another statewide election. Ever.
No, and also, like, you turn on the TV, which a lot of people still listen to the CNN, MSNBC, and every day it's just hate-fueled rage bait on Republicans or conservatives or whoever it might be. But Democrats are always put on that pedestal. They're the good guys. They're for the little guys, the working class.
I mean, you're right. You're right, but they can do that. You're right, but they can do that because of what I just said. Let's just take Minneapolis, for example. For 40 years, Republicans have gave the middle finger to Minneapolis, St. Paul. So, what do you expect people to do?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, so this is the Republicans making of their own. All right. They constructed their own destruction. I mean, I'm 50 years old. I lived in Minneapolis all my life. And I don't ever remember a Republican campaigning in Minneapolis. Right. Ever. Yeah. And when there's open seat, it doesn't even matter. I must give them an excuse. It doesn't matter. If you believe in your platform, if you believe in what your party stands for, if you believe that being pro-life is a good thing that would benefit. Like I'm talking about the black community because I'm talking about black people because the whole abortion thing, and supposedly there's more. People believe that abortion affects the black community more than other communities. Right. I don't know all the numbers on that. I don't want to be. But my point is, if you believe that, if you want to be pro-life and you want to spread that message to people who may be having abortions, or you're a Second Amendment person and believe people have the right to protect themselves, especially when a time in Minneapolis where crime is out the roof, right. And people should be able to protect themselves because you can't rely on the police department because the police department is 75% at capacity of operation for officers. Right. If you believe in those concepts, and you actually want to help, if you believe, lowering taxes and property taxes and business taxes is going to help spawn or, reignite Minneapolis' economy after the riots and George Floyd, if you believe that stuff, why wouldn't you campaign to those people to try to get in this area and win and help these people? If you really believe that. I
think Republicans are scared. And I really do.
Good point.
I agree. I tell a lot of people, when some of my conservative friends hear this podcast, they might be upset with me.
I'm not.
But I'm going to tell you the truth. A lot of Republicans are cowards.
Right.
They're spineless.
Yes, they are.
They're almost like beta men. They might as well be liberal beta guys for Kamala.
Right.
They're so soft. I tell my wife all the time, and at least even nationally, Republican women got bigger balls than Republican men nowadays.
Got big nuts.
Republican women are putting it down. They're holding it down. It's the men that are acting soft.
Right.
And it's sad, and that's why I just don't care no more. I'm like, I don't give a fuck what anyone calls me. It is what it is. I'll tell the fucking truth, and if you have a problem with that, then you have a problem with the truth, not a problem with me. So I don't really care, but I do know that they're scared. They're simply scared. Like, and it's ridiculous. Like, you can't say anything because you're scared of repercussion. Someone's gonna call you a bad name. I'm like, dude, you're an adult, and if you're probably over the age of 30, so it's all like.
Right.
You don't got time to be a child anymore. You got to do what's right. You got to try to figure stuff out because that's what you were put there to do. If you can't do the job, then leave. Simple as that. Right. And it blows my mind though that people cannot see what's actually going on.
Let me tell you something real quick, man. I'm running for Minneapolis mayor. Everybody knows I'm a Republican, right?
Yep.
The local BPOU for the Minneapolis Republican Party to be able to they've decided not to hold an endorsement process for the mayor position. They're going to hold endorsements for city council positions, but they're not going to hold endorsements for the mayor's race. You know why?
Why?
Only because they don't want to have to deal with me. They don't want to endorse me. They don't want to support me. That's the only reason why. Why would you not want to endorse someone who's not afraid to stand up for conservative principles and values and policies in a city, in an area, in a state that's dominated by Democrats and is willing to bring the fight to the Democrats about some change?
Right.
Why would you not want to endorse that person?
Good point.
Right.
Now I have my suspicions or whatever, but I don't even care because that's I'm not crying about not being able to be endorsed. What I'm saying is going back to the incompetence of the Minnesota Republicans. My local BPOU has gone out of their way to make sure that they don't have to give me an endorsement process because they don't even want to deal with me.
Yeah.
What does that tell you?
We got a problem.
It tells me I don't care because I'm still going to run. I'm a Republican whether you endorse me or not.
Right.
And when I win, you won't be able to take credit for my success. That's how I move.
Yep.
That don't hurt my feelings. Don't endorse me. Because honestly, when I tell people this, when this gets out, that the Republican Party in Minneapolis didn't want to endorse Laverne Turner, why? Why? And he told on him. And he's still running. And he might win. Because I don't need them. I don't need the Republican Party. Me being endorsed by the Republican Party in Minneapolis isn't really going to help my campaign. So whatever they think they're doing as far as to hurt my campaign by not wanting to endorse me, you're really just helping me out. Thank you.
Straight up. Straight up. I wanted to pull this up because I seen this post online, and I just wanted to pull it up so we could speak about this.
So when part 2 comes up, I am going to play that because I do feel like there's a lot of good stuff that's involved in what Laverne was talking about, and especially about Minneapolis. And because I do live in a rural area, right? But I go to Minneapolis all the time. And it's crazy to me of the difference of what you see, because you see more liberals and progressives, but then it's Trump country out here. I'll be honest. These people out here fly Trump flags. They make it known this is not a liberal area. You're not welcomed here. They don't want your views. You can tell a vast difference between rural living and inner city and urban areas, because you have more people that are, I would say they're conservative, but I won't even say they're conservative. They got them liberal, progressive, weirdo views. And we need to stand up to that. And I do agree. We have a lot of politics in Minnesota, especially when it comes to the Minneapolis area, especially St. Paul. They don't like Republicans. And I feel like there is more people down there that feel disenfranchised, that feel unheard, that aren't progressive, that aren't liberals, but are only given that choice. They're only giving Mayor Frey or Jamal Osman, skip that, Omar Fatih or DeRay Davis. What about a man that wants to bring that family nucleus, that fiscal sponsors our responsibility back? That we make sure that we get what we're promised. And we're not getting that right now. Because I will tell you right now, I do agree with a lot of it, is that we sit in this country right now and we're at a weird place in history. We're at a weird place because if you live in the inner city, just like you look at Chicago, if you look at New York City, those are highly liberal, progressive areas for years. But then you're starting to see some of this. Oh, thank you, man. I want the truth to come out. And it's crazy because there's a lot that needs to be talked about and exposed about in Minneapolis when it comes to our state legislators, and why Minneapolis has allowed it to be the way that it is. Because a lot of it has to do with conflict of interest. A lot of it has to do with ethics. But because it's done so much on the regular and in front of people's faces, they think that it's okay. And to be honest, it's not, because our community doesn't change. That's the right, hold both sides accountable. I definitely agree there. I definitely agree. It's not just one-sided, but I will say this, in every side of the country, we live in different states. We live in different cities. I can tell you right now is that my state legislators sit on both sides of the aisle, right? One is Democratic and one is Republican. And I think the other one is Quam's is a Republican too. So I agree. Now you go to other areas, especially like Baltimore, you go to Dallas, these are Oakland. These are places that are predominantly Black, But once you start talking about that conservative Republican talk, they don't want to hear it. And Laverne is right. You cannot in Minneapolis, period, if you're a Republican, because I will tell you, look at Sean Holster, who runs the Minneapolis BPOU. Look how much he got whooped by when he ran for House against Sanaa Muhammad. Look how much he got whooped by. Look how much Diane Napper just lost by. And these, you know what's crazy is I campaigned for Sean Holster in 2022. I campaigned for a lot of these people. But when it comes to North Minneapolis, it's hard to get any kind of events over there if you're a Republican. You can't go to, they were allowed to in 2022, Cicely Davis and Ryan Wilson, I think it was Jim Schultz was there too, but it was at Shiloh Temple. They're only allowed to go to them type of places. You know, and when we want to shut streets down or we want to do shit in parks and we don't care about, and I understand it, but we're in a time that it's by any means necessary. Because how did America become America? It was political violence. It was the American Revolution, the Boston Tea Party. Because here's the one thing that I will say, that over time, over a period of history, what have we always heard? What have we always seen? That the silenced stop becoming silent and become violent. And can you disagree with them? Can you disagree with half of America right now? And tell you the truth, it's a majority of Americans. You have a small minority that are very loud. And that's it. Because people are more worried about clout and fame. It's not about change. Because I will tell you right now, you ask anybody right now, there's 16 people on here, right? Let me ask this. What kind of change have you seen in your communities other than bank accounts changing? Because the community, I'll tell you right now, they've gotten worse. You see homelessness, even though they try to hide it in Minneapolis, Rochester, St. Paul, it's not hidden. Look at the abandoned buildings. Look at that condemned buildings. You just seen, I will tell you one thing, is May 1st is going to be really sad. It's going to be a sad day when you see people that were listening to Minneapolis radio when it came to the police and the fire and all that, because we wouldn't know that, a young man got killed into a garage over in North Minneapolis before the bridge. We wouldn't know about all the fights that happened after bar close or even during bar hours. We call it demon time. We wouldn't know about the 7 to 8 people that were trying to get into an abandoned building. We wouldn't know about none of this. That it's because of us. Even with Derek Chauvin, that is because of us. It's not because they wanted to do the right thing, because if they wanted to do the right thing, we wouldn't have seen what we've seen. We wouldn't have seen that it took Liz Collins and Alpha News to win a lawsuit that Katie Blackwell perjured herself on the stand. And do you think Minneapolis cares? Nope. And just like Laverne said, nothing. It's just gotten worse because it has. And I will be honest, because Republicans just sat by. I will say this, and I'll give credit when credit is due. When you call, they pull up to events. Sometimes. But when you need them, they're not there. Now, I will be honest, because I will tell you right now, in 2022, when Scott Jensen and Matt Burke and all of them were running for office, me and Marcus, even Todd Graham, when Grammons was a part of Black Lives in the Streets, they cared Scott Jensen and used Marcus and Todd heavy. We had, what's the one crazy part of it is that, and probably maybe some people would admit to it and maybe some won't, but me and Marcus were behind a lot of shit when it came to the Republicans in Minneapolis. And it's been like, even with Laverne Turn, Brian Warfield, we were trying to do what we could. But if you don't have that backing of like that top tier Republicans, they don't give a fuck about you. They don't give a fuck. Because I'll be honest, we had a building over north called the Northside Outreach Center, right? That we were going to make it totally Republican, totally conservative, right? We didn't want nothing to do with liberals. We wanted everything to be backed, right? Investors, whatever you want to call it. We wanted them to be conservative. We wanted them to be people that cared about the community. You think any Republicans got behind that? Nope. Because they had that Park Avenue building, the Somalian Republican Center. That's what they cared more about. And now you see, here's the one crazy part, because I'll tell you right now, I see this guy all over my Facebook all the time, that little Takashi Ismail or whatever. How would this nigga got all this money and y'all act like they didn't have nothing to do with feeding our future? Because there's a whole lot of motherfuckers that ain't even been brought up yet. A whole lot of people that ain't even brought up yet. You look at, I'm going to talk about this later about Bobby Champion, but I'm going to show y'all something. When it came down to these connections, this is a reason why only certain people were getting money from grants, from organizations, because they were selected. If you came out here and told the truth what was going on, they demonized you. They demonize you in North Minneapolis. And if you're not strong to walk alone, niggas be hairy up trying to get the fuck up out of there. Because I will tell you like now, is that there's a lot of motherfuckers that they didn't want to be. I mean, they shot at Marcus. They try to blow up our building. They try to jump us. We're not being quiet. But who's standing with us? Not the Republican Party, not people that can make a difference. They're not standing. You know why they're not standing with us? Because the same way that we see some of these crooks, they do the same exact shit. Because that's when you look at the cash on hands, it's a disgrace how the Democrats have all this money and the Republicans barely got squat. Because they don't want a fun change. They would. Here's the thing of it is, they just think that you can make change on your own without nothing. That's not the case. Because here's the thing of it is, people call themselves self-made men. They're not. It takes always somebody to make you something. It takes a crowd to make it right. Because when you're just that one person, look what happened to Malcolm. Look what happened to Martin Luther King. Look what happened to Fred Hampton. Look what happened to all of our great Black leaders over time. They've demonized them because they stood alone. Marcus Garvey, Frederick Douglass. They didn't care what anybody had to say. Think about that. Think about that. Think about that. Right. He knows that. Right. No, and here that I don't even know what to say about Minneapolis half the time, because these people, these voters, I start to think that it's a lot that people are uninformed, are uneducated, are, because a lot of it, I feel like we get mad at the wrong people. We've allowed our older generation to sit here and sit by and do nothing. And do nothing. And that's the one crazy part is, it's like, I don't know what to say anymore. I honestly don't know what to say anymore, because you look at your friends and they complain about what's going on, but what do? Nothing. They continue going to get their paychecks from their oppressor. And until that runs out, where they're not going to give that money anymore, then people will care. And it's sad, because until you're affected, you only care. That's the way it goes. And I don't know why it's like that. But I want to get into one thing is that it's going to really affect Minnesota is this long care insurance crisis that we haven't, that maybe nobody wants to really talk about, but I do. So if you're not seeing what's going on and not having a voice about it, is because I see Governor Walz coming out here doing his town halls about, Social Security and long-term and veterans and all that, but I barely see any Republicans. I don't see Brad Finstad, which I live in his district. He doesn't come over here. I don't see him. I just got Gene DeBornak to write me back, to email me back. So it's not like these people are really, you can get a hold of them like that because it's not easy. So with that being said, I want to get into the long-term care insurance crisis.
For aging adults become a source of frustration.
I've never heard anybody say, I cannot wait to retire to fight insurance companies.
Soaring cost for families.
These are not just numbers on their balance sheet, these are actual human beings.
And an industry in crisis.
No one should have to deal with these struggles.
It's a reality that now has many Minnesotans simply wondering, who benefits?
I want to grow old gracefully.
With dignity. All good intentions, but help make them a reality with long-term care insurance from GE.
In the 1990s, long-term care insurance was a booming business. They were sold as a way for people to plan for the future, covering the cost for an aging adult who might one day be placed in a nursing home, or offsetting bills for long-term care for people with disabling diseases. One of those long-term care insurance companies is Continental Casualty Company, also known as CNA. It sold policies to Minnesotans, who at one point paid more than $32 million in premiums. That's more than any other state in the country. The policies were often sold as part of a benefits package to state, county, and city workers, including to some of the state's largest employers, including Mayo Clinic, 3M, and Wells Fargo. These are some of CNA's own marketing materials, where it promised affordable and stable premiums.
On a sense of a consumer, it is a great policy. On a business line, they were silly to write these things.
But decades later, the long-term care industry is now in crisis. A couple reasons why. Life expectancy has gone up, and so has the cost of care.
They underestimated the number of people who are going to hang on to these policies.
Financial records reviewed by the Fox 9 investigators reveal CNA has repeatedly raised rates on customers in recent years, offered policy buyouts at a fraction of their worth, and pressured people to walk away from their insurance policies they paid into for decades.
I think we all know what right and wrong is.
John's parents bought their long-term care insurance from CNA in 2004. And while they had to fight the insurance company on his dad's claim, his mom's premiums started going up.
It seems like pressuring old people to stop paying the premiums for things that they've been hoping they'd be able to use at this point in time.
He's not wrong. Listen to this.
Our rate increase programs are ongoing.
Listen to how the company laid out their plans in a call with investors.
We were fairly successful this year in achieving rate increases, and we expect that to continue going forward.
In Minnesota, CNA wanted to increase rates by 345% over the last 9 years. While the state rejected that request, it allowed CNA to increase rates up to 97% over the same time frame. We went to the state agency that approved those rate hikes to ask them how they justify those increases to consumers.
There is, I think, a necessary balance between consumer protection and preventing too much financial distress for the insurers.
I also asked the state about companies propping up their business with rate hikes.
I'm not too happy about that.
As for CNA, they did not respond to our interview requests, but in presentations with its own investors, the company repeatedly highlighted the success they've had in raising rates.
Way to go. That's fantastic for you. Meanwhile, My mom's trying to decide if she wants to continue with her premium or not because the premiums got more expensive. She's scared not to go with her premium because she's afraid that if she ends up in a long-term care situation, she won't be able to afford it. And that's why 20 years ago they bought into this policy.
But CNA is now facing a class action lawsuit, claiming the company has, quote, schemed to maximize profits and recoup losses at their expense, and that its practices are both deceptive and underhanded.
Yeah, that's not great. That's not a great feeling, knowing that they are doing this intentionally.
Betsy is a mother to 3 young children, and part of that lawsuit.
I have an arthritis disease.
She purchased her long-term care insurance years ago to avoid becoming a financial burden later in life.
Really, because again, I had chronic health conditions, was making sure that, especially if it happened even in the next 30 years, that my family, my children, and my husband would be protected from those potential costs.
But her payments have gone up repeatedly, and she's received offers from CNA to reduce her benefits and even buy out the policy altogether.
I did receive 2 of those. They were for around $28,000, and that's a big amount of money as a young family. That's really tempting just to take that.
Those are all examples of CNA's methods that have contributed to policyholders either reducing their coverage or walking away from their policies completely.
It seems as though their default is to try to get out of it.
To recap, CNA had an excellent quarter.
That's CNA's former CEO on an investor call in 2023, celebrating their ability to offload long-term care insurance policies.
Policy counts are down more than 40% since the block was closed to new participants.
That same year, his total compensation jumped 7 figures, topping $16 million.
I think it just reflects poorly in the entire insurance industry.
Maybe I should just have bought CNA stock, not my long-term care insurance plan. Because if I was a shareholder, this is fabulous.
But the problems with long-term care insurance don't end there. What happens when people try to cash in on their insurance and make a claim? That's the next part of the story that we're currently working on, and it involves a pattern of delays and denials.
Damn. When they come out with that, that's something I do want to play, because that is something that Minnesota and Minneapolis needs to be worried about, is long-term insurance. And is there payouts? Is there, claims that are settled and are handled and all that? So that is important because that is something that taxpayers that we do as we pay for. I want to get into another story, right? And we've all heard the numerous stories of Minneapolis and how back in the day they wronged a community. And it's time that we start to right those wrongs. So listen to this story about the coalition to free Muhammad Mahdi Ali launches that campaign. So coalition to free Mahdi Ali launches campaign.
Mahdi Ali was a teenager when he was convicted for a triple homicide at a Minneapolis convenience store. Now, this is a case that the Fox 9 investigators previously highlighted as Ali serves a life in prison. The killings took place in 2010, but today, a grassroots coalition launched a campaign to fight for Ali's release. Fox 9's Babs Santos was there, and Babs, Ali's supporters continue to say he was wrongfully convicted.
Yeah, in part pointing to recanted witness statements as outlined in that previous reporting. In 2021, Ali's cousin told Fox 9's Tom Lydon Ali was not involved and was used as a scapegoat to take the fall for another unidentified man who would later die from a drug overdose. Today, the group also heard from Ali himself, who called in from prison.
I want to start by saying I'm innocent. What happened to me is tragic. What happened to me and what occurred in itself, in that senseless crime that happened at night, it's tragic. It's crazy, man, me fighting for justice.
And in the room today, many had tears in their eyes when they heard Ali's voice. They are adamant he is innocent, including his own mother, who also spoke with us with the help of a translator.
She said she has a lot of hope to his release because I know her son is and my son is innocent. This is story everybody can tell. This child is innocent.
It's important to note the Minnesota Supreme Court has twice upheld Ali's conviction. In addition to witness statements used against him at trial, there was DNA evidence in the case, a drop of blood found inside the cuff of his jeans. So as the legal situation now stands, Ali is not eligible for release from prison until he is 107 years old. Live in the newsroom, Babs Santos, Fox 9.
Thanks, Babs.
Click here to make your very own monster unadapted mind, where
Unadapted
monsters
mind.
teach.
That's teaching. Wow. Man, so if y'all don't, and this is the one thing I hate, right? Because an injustice was done, and our lawmakers, our state legislators don't care about that. They're not talking about a Cornelius Jackson or a Timothy Magruder or Jermaine Ferguson. People are being retaliated against when they come out and speak out, and then have to have advocates do stuff for them. You know what I'm saying? And do I agree with everything that it's, sometimes is done or not done? Listen, I'm not the one that's being done to. So I can't say that they're wrong or their actions are, because there's been an injustice. So it's not for me to sit there and say that they're wrong. The system is wrong for putting them in that predicament. Because how could that person wouldn't react like that if the system never did its actions? So to be honest, I don't know. The more we go through and see, cases like Edgar Barrentos or Marvin Haynes, and we hear the injustices that are happening all across this so-called great nation, when it comes to our judicial systems, when it comes to our courts. We've seen that police departments are able to lie to individuals. We see that corporations do what they do to be able to make convictions when it comes to, I'll just speak about, Minneapolis, but the Downtown Improvement District. That's one of them. So that's the way that it's always been. So, it is turning into something bigger. And I believe that it started years ago, that people, especially when it came to the wrongfully incarcerated, the wrongfully convicted, or overly sentenced, because there's been a lot of looks at those cases when it comes to, eyewitness ID, or, the police lied to suspects who they claim were guilty suspects. And instead of just doing their due diligence, giving people their due process. So we failed as a community, and who do we blame that on? So I want to get into this fight or flight, right? And we're talking about deportations. To me, they made it into a big old political that it shouldn't be, right? It shouldn't be it should be, hey, I don't, to be honest, I don't know anymore, right? And I probably haven't for a very long time, because I'm starting to see how they're treating us and how they're treating other people. But then they've already done that to Black people, our whole generations. You know what I'm saying? No matter if it came to when we were here as slaves, because we were seen as property. We had to fight all the way until 1965 to be able to. Still, we're seeing cases of injustice of Black men being unarmed and being killed by the police, all because of the color of their skin, all because in my eyes, they're intimidated by skin color.
There is a lot of good stuff happening right now. We're seeing some real fight from Democratic lawmakers. That's good. We're seeing institutions stand up to Donald Trump. That's definitely good. We're seeing courts stop him in his tracks. That's great. And this weekend, we saw more massive protests all across the country. But I actually wanted to start today by talking about fear, because fear is clearly a major driver of Trump's brand of politics, always has been. And how we all respond to that fear in this moment is going to determine a whole lot about the future of this country. Congressman Jamie Raskin summed it up pretty well in the New York Times this week. He said There's a regime of fear that's been brought down on society. People need to see leaders and organizers standing up and speaking with authority against what's happening. Congressman Jamie Raskin summed it up very well there. He's here today. We have a lot to talk about. We're going to talk to him in just a moment. But I also want to talk about a few other things, because this week we also saw at least one Republican acknowledge that fear too. I mean, during an event in Alaska this week, Senator Lisa Murkowski was asked what she would say to people who are afraid right now. And she was way more candid than I at least expected her to be.
What do you have to say to people who are afraid? Or who represent people who are afraid? We are all afraid. Okay? It's quite a statement. But we are, we're in a time and a place where I don't know, I certainly have not been here before. And I'll tell you, I'm oftentimes very anxious myself about using my voice, because retaliation is real, and that's not right.
That's definitely not right. And retaliation is real. We've seen it. Those fears are real. We all know that Trump is vindictive, and he's betting he can gain a lot of leverage by creating even more fear. But at the same time, we've already seen that giving in to his demands gets you absolutely nowhere. I mean, when law firms cave, the demands don't stop. The firms that struck deals with Trump are now learning that the White House will effectively be choosing their pro bono clients for them. And when universities cave, the demands don't stop either. Columbia's deal with Trump might now include a court decree giving the White House control over the university's management. And when media outlets cave, the demands definitely don't stop. I mean, Paramount entered into settlement talks with Trump over a frivolous lawsuit, and Trump still pushed the FCC to revoke CBS's broadcast license. Point is this: capitulating to Trump won't save you. You'll just be targeted again and again. Because when you give in to Trump's demands, you're just sending the message his threats and tactics work. You're not putting the episode behind you. You're just inviting more demands. That's how mob bosses work. And remember, fear is what Donald Trump sees as his most effective tool. I mean, in some ways, it's his only tool. Fear of retribution and fear of him weaponizing the powers of his office is basically what he relies on. And he's obviously relying on it to use that office in ways we've never seen before. I mean, he's trying to use the IRS, of all places, to target the nonprofit status of universities, which is the goal of making all nonprofit groups afraid of continuing the work that they are doing. He's trying to use immigration powers to make any non-citizen fear that he could change their legal status and force them out of the country at a moment's notice. Trump is using his office to instill fear in every single way he can. And he's doing it in a way that he thinks, at least, is politically smart. He thinks it is. He's trying to lure his political opponents into making this about just defending elite institutions like Harvard or big city law firms nobody's ever heard of. He's spreading lies about Kilmar Abrego Garcia, daring people to defend him personally rather than defending the rights he's been denied. And on the issue of Garcia specifically, some Democrats have said it's a distraction from the economic calamity he's caused. Some have said Kilmar Abrego Garcia is an imperfect hero for this issue. Maybe he is, saying it's playing on Trump's turf on immigration. And Republicans really do think this is their turf. They really do. I mean, just listen to how Stephen Miller described this issue.
President Trump, his policy is foreign terrorists that are here illegally get expelled from the country, which, by the way, is a 90-10 issue.
Sounds scary. I mean, 90-10? First of all, Stephen Miller needs a math class, I think we've all learned. But that's a big bluff from a little man and his sidekick. It's true that when pollsters are asked broad questions, when they ask broad questions to people out there about immigration and deportation broadly, Trump's policies do well. But when those questions get more specific, and that's important, it's a totally different story. A YouGov poll this morning found that 6 in 10 respondents said they opposed deporting immigrants without criminal convictions to El Salvador to be imprisoned, without letting them challenge their deportation in court. 61%, guys. That's a pretty clear majority. especially compared to the 26% of respondents who said they supported Trump's actions. It's not exactly 90-10 in Stephen Miller's favor on that one, is it? And we're seeing that on the ground in states across the country, too, even some pretty red states. Just listen to the earful that Republican Senator Chuck Grassley got from an older, mostly white crowd in Iowa this week.
Hello, I'm Bob Kitchen. I'm the IRC's Vice President of Emergency Programs. Right now I'm standing outside Al-Aqsa Hospital. Over the last few days, I've witnessed truly unprecedented humanitarian needs. Fighting and indiscriminate bombing have forced more than 1 million people to flee for their lives. This level of destruction hasn't been seen in decades, so people are now everywhere trying desperately to find space and shelter and food. And doctors have been killed. Water has been switched off, and there aren't anywhere near enough toilets for everyone. So not only are people hungry, they're also facing a desperate race against disease outbreaks. I've done this work for 25 years, and I've never seen such destruction, displacement, and such an intense hunger develop so quickly. IRC's team is working around the clock, alongside incredible Palestinian partners, to do everything we can to save lives.
Okay.
Are you going to bring that guy back from El Salvador? Why not?
Well, because that's not a power of Congress.
Supreme Court said to bring him back.
Yeah, but
What can they do?
He's defined the Constitution. Trump don't care.
If I get an order to pay a ticket for $1,200 and I just say no, does that stand up? Because he's got an order from the Supreme Court and he just said no.
Yeah. He just said screw it.
The president of that country is not subject to our U.S. Supreme Court.
If Trump wanted to bring him back, bring him back.
I'm pissed.
Not sure that was what Senator Grassley was expecting from that town hall meeting in central Iowa. I mean, I guess people in central Iowa are a part of that 10% Stephen Miller was talking about. I mean, who knows? And I guess a Reagan-appointed federal judge is too in his calculation. In that federal judge's ruling upholding court decisions requiring the government to facilitate Abrego Garcia's return, Judge James Harvey Wilkinson III did not mince words exactly. He wrote, quote, "It is difficult in some cases to get to the very heart of the matter, but in this case, it's not hard at all. The government is asserting a right to stash away residents of this country in foreign prisons without the semblance of due process that is the foundation of our constitutional order. The government is asserting a right to stash away residents of this country in foreign prisons." I mean, that is a pretty clear distillation of the issue here. Likewise, the Supreme Court dealt Trump another big setback just this weekend. In an order that they issued at 1 a.m. Saturday morning, making some of the judges cranky, the court temporarily blocked the administration from deporting another group of detainees to El Salvador under the Alien Enemies Act. That was a 7-2 decision by Donald Trump's ultra-conservative court, 7-2. So the courts seem to be standing up to him. Some Republicans are standing up to him. And the public is not exactly on his side either. And what's now becoming clear is there are actually rewards for standing up. It's morally right, but there are rewards too. I mean, after Harvard said it would stand up to Trump's demands, it saw an outpouring of support and an immediate surge in donations. The pushback had enough of an effect on the Trump administration that they came up with a tortured process explanation, as the only way I can describe it, of how this all happened. With White House officials.
Yeah. So there is something coming. I'm not, to be honest, for sure what it's going to look like. People just need to be observant. People need to be, watch your surroundings, watch, where you're shopping, not put yourself into predicaments that could potentially be things that people say, wrong time, wrong place. To be honest, it should never, we need to move past that wrong time, wrong place, because it's happening everywhere. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter sometimes your race, your color, your creed. It doesn't give a fuck about any of that. You know what I'm saying? So what it cares about is that can the system chew you up and spit you out. So next, I want to get into what I think what a lot of people have been waiting on. I want to talk about Senator Bobby Champion. I want to talk about the ethics, power, and the Minneapolis move, right? So we're going to watch, what I'm going to show is, this is a subcommittee on ethical conduct. It's a review on Senator Champion's complaint that was done in 2014. So this is from November 5th. And I want to play that. It's only about 5 minutes long, but I think we have to look at our patterns, right? So if there's a pattern, we have to call it out. And when there's a pattern of bad behavior, it only gets worse, not better, because it doesn't get better until somebody checks it. So that's what you're seeing now when it comes to the fraud and waste, because it's going to come from the people and not from the people making laws.
And we're bringing the complaint because we believe there is evidence to warrant further investigation. And as you know, and we've had further or parallel kinds of discussion with respect to Senator Hayden, that there has been a public accusation that Senators Hayden and Champion in some way threatened the school district to grant money to the Community Standards Initiative. And parallel to that was the report that if that didn't happen, that there might be some retribution in the form of restricting or somehow perhaps not making available funds that the senators would have a chance to influence their adoption. And we know from previous hearing about the bill that was authored, the grant that was suggested, that bill was not ultimately acted on, but instead there was funding provided to the school district with the understanding that there would be a process to grant some money to some organization, not specifically naming Community Standards, and that at some point in that process, that grant was made to CSI. And in that process somewhere, according to the report that we have from the Star Tribune account, one source said that there was some threat made by Senators Hayden and Champion. We also, beyond the influencing that we think may have been improper, the subcommittee needs to look at whether Senator Champion himself benefited in some way financially by CSI receiving this grant. And that is based on the logic that Mr. Al Flowers was a founder of the Community Standards Initiative, and that Mr. Champion is representing Mr. Flowers in another legal matter, and so he consequently has a professional and fiduciary relationship with him. And as an agent of CSI, Mr. Flowers' receipt of a $375,000 grant could constitute a financial benefit for Mr. Champion.
The articles accuses him of using his position as a state senator to threaten and bully the Minneapolis Public School into issuing a contract with CSI. I've seen to date nothing that supports that allegation. The members of this body know Senator Champion. They've worked with him. They've witnessed firsthand his hard work ethic, his integrity, his honesty. It is patently unfair for his integrity to be impugned based upon unnamed sources.
And I want to be very clear, because I think it's important to be clear, is that I did not bully, threaten, or force the Minneapolis Public Schools to enter into a contract with CSI. And if you look at the complaint as articulated and put, and if we just look at it on its face, because Senator Hand has spent lots of time talking about articles as if those articles are fact. Those articles are not fact. Information that's contained therein isn't a fact. In fact, Senator Hand indicated that he hadn't talked to the newspaper writer. He didn't talk to this alleged unnamed source. He didn't talk to anyone. But what is also interesting is that the article is just clearly wrong. It's an unsworn statement being validated as true because Senator Hand wants to file a very serious, and I underscore, serious complaint based on an article without doing any checking as to the veracity of the article, not checking with the Minneapolis Public Schools before he even came to this body.
He said that I never talked to the newspaper reporter. That is not true. I did speak to the newspaper reporter after her initial report, and I did ask her, as a pro forma exercise, if she would tell me who it was, and of course she wouldn't, and I didn't expect that she would. But I did ask her, too, if it's possible that the source could have misunderstood. That is it possible that in the course of whatever advocacy that was going on, if somebody could have misunderstood advocacy for a threat? And what she told me was no, that the source had informed her that that was not a misunderstanding and that she stood by the story. So you were incorrect, I think, Senator Champion, saying that I never spoke to the reporter. I did, and my conversation with her, at least in my mind, said, well, there's a serious allegation that's made in the paper, and you are right. When things are put in the paper, sometimes we ignore them as elected officials because they're ridiculous or because they don't deserve comment. But when somebody makes a serious charge in the paper that says this is going on, and it clearly, if it's going on, is not proper, I think you have to pay attention to that. And so our complaint is based on that report to the extent that we say that should be put to rest. If that didn't happen, then it should be very clearly
put to rest, right?
Put out there that the paper got it wrong, or that the source got it wrong, or somebody got it wrong. But it shouldn't be out there, as Senator Champion has mentioned, to be just one of those things that hangs.
No, and so that's what you're going to see. There, in my eyes, they're going to be, well, these are just news articles. And no, hold on, because there's a pattern, right? And I want to show y'all something, right? Because now, the years that, so what they're talking about, this ethics committee, right? Complaint is that Bobby Champion was writing bills and authoring bills for his clients that were out in the community that were nonprofit leaders. So it was said that Reverend McAfee never paid for legal fees, right? But when you see on 990 forms, he paid $16,000 in 2023, and in 2024 he paid $133,000. So if you never paid Bobby Champion legal fees, right? Why can't we see it? Because he doesn't. Here's the thing of it is, and I know McAfee's going to say, well, they confused me in the articles and the reporters. They were all using all these big words. No, they weren't. They were putting the evidence out there, and you didn't have an answer, right? Because Bobby's sister worked for A Mother's Love, who also they were writing grants for, right? But she's also linked to the church at New Salem, which the pastor is Jerry McAfee, right? And then you have to see that she's also, when it came to an FBI warrant, and part of the Stair Step Foundation, all things that are in these ethics, the new ethics complaint, and that honestly people need to be looking at, because this is their information, right? And I just want you to show you guys. You can look it up. There's the EIN. But whose name do you see? Jerry McAfee, 2507 Bryant Avenue North. Now, when you look at the federal warrant, what addresses do you see? 2507 Bryant Avenue North and 715 Penn. I don't understand it. Why is it so hard for people to see the wrong? Because I see a lot of individuals standing up and speaking, oh, there was nothing wrong. You know, people are questioning his integrity, and it's like, no, why? It's way bigger than that. It's way bigger than that. Because this is the one thing that I will say, is that all of this is linked. This is the reason why there is so much injustice in Minneapolis, is because people get paid to think that what they're doing is right and it's actually wrong. But because they're getting paid to do it, and they can afford Tesla trucks, they can afford to live out in nice neighborhoods out in Brooklyn Park. You know, they can bring their kids to private schools. What about the community you work for? What about the community, your constituents, your parishioners, your flock because you're taken care of. But what about the rest? Because we have to live in this shit. And yet people can send me, this is the one crazy thing, right? Is I see this every day. Well, he didn't do anything illegal. What? Because Minnesota doesn't have laws on it. But I will tell you this, and I don't know how many other people in Minneapolis, Laverne Turner, Angela Williams, Reverend Tim Christopher, all because we don't see ourselves as, and most of us don't even see ourselves as official Republicans. We just do not believe in the Democratic views, their ways of kids can get gender affirming care without your parents' consent. So you mean little Timmy gonna come home and he could potentially be a girl, all without telling his parents? Isn't that wild? Are people okay with that? Are we okay with all this trauma that we're causing in our community in Minnesota? Especially when it comes to gender affirming care, because that's not something that kids should be worried about. They shouldn't be worried about their gender. They shouldn't be worried about their sex, because at the end of the day, they should be worried about an education. They should be worrying about how they're going to better their communities. But instead, we have a public education system that wants to teach all the wrongs, doesn't want to do anything that's right anymore, doesn't want to put trade schools, because what happened to wood class? What happened to the home economics? What happened to cursive? All that is going out the window. You know, I remember when I was back in high school, we used to have you could get your oil changed. They don't do that shit no more, barely. And to be honest, a mechanic is somebody that changes oil is a very pretty good profession. But yeah, we're not leading our young generation into being something different. I mean, let's be honest. We're not telling kids that it's okay to be a garbage man or be a plumber or electrician, right? Even though that's an honest day's work, it's an opportunity to better your community, to better your and again, people don't see it that way. And it's, to me, it's I don't know. I see it as wrong. I think that we need to be different with it. But honestly, I don't know how many people honestly see it as wrong. I don't know, and that is sick. I don't know how many people see what's going on in our communities as it's wrong. I'm going to be honest. I don't think that there's many people that see that as wrong. As wrong. And honestly, we should. We should see that as wanting to be better and wanting to be so that we can change our community for the better, for not just one or two people or, 3 or 4, because that's all you're getting paid to change. You're not getting paid to change the whole community. You're getting paid to change a little part. So then we got the administration costs. We have the cost of, the director, the CFO, the CEO, your employees, and then we have the money for the streets. So whatever we have over and left over, well, honestly, that's what and it's not much, because you're seeing most of it is to pay employees. It's not to change people's lives, but it's so that you can pay to change people's bank accounts. I'm gonna leave it at that. Damn, it's Monday. I hope everybody has a great Monday. Watch what happens today. The session starts back up at noon. go through the whole process. They get sworn back in, and to finish out this last month, because it's going to be hectic. Watch this committee tomorrow. I won't be playing it. I got court, but this is something that will be, I think, will be big, and I will play it later. I'll play the whole thing on the ethics committee, and we'll go through it and we'll talk about it. How people feel about it, how people feel about what they've heard, how about, you know, people feel about what's came out, not only just news articles, because a lot of this has already been posted. Nobody ever believed it, you know, until a community was greatly affected. They didn't care, because it was North Minneapolis. It was Minneapolis. It was a dead zone. And that's where a majority of the politics, that's what they think about Minneapolis, that we're a dead zone. So with that being said, man, have a great Monday. I'll be back tomorrow, hopefully. So win or fail, freedom or jail, heaven or hell, wish me well. And here is Matt Capone, a love poem. So I took this off of, I've been watching something called Voices in Power. I love it. It's out of Philly. And I wanted to bring you this because I felt like this was a very good poem. And I really got into my poetry, not so much as performing it, but more writing it. So with that being said, here is Matt Capone, a love poem. And I'll see y'all tomorrow.
I learned that intimacy starts with the good morning and ends with the orgasm and a good night. I learned that forehead kisses and hugs can be looked at as love when it's coming from someone you like. Like, how come every time we hold hands, I be thinking you're gonna propose? And how your affirmations from cheek kisses lets me know everything I need to know. You be making me feel special even when I don't fill up the par. Neck kisses and chest ripping, got my London bridges down and exposing my lady parts like you really know how to make a girl feel beautiful. I be staring at you in your sleep like I could really get used to you. How conversations be deeper than the scratches in your back and the residue in your cuticles. Like, I learned with the love, us, just sounds better. I mean, you like the perfect 72-degree weather when we around each other. I mean, no wonder it's easy to fall for you because you just make sense. I mean, you like the perfect date and the perfect dress at the perfect event. I mean, you jaw-dropping. You deserve long walks down the aisle when wedding bells and vows meant just for you. You deserve a safe space to express yourself to someone who loves you and vent to. You deserve spa dates and massages with the black rocks. You're like a scissor song I can never snooze to because you're a fixed broken clock. Wow. She be healing. She be Marvin Gaye when I get that feeling. She be the perfect love poem. You know the one Tupac wrote, Jada, she be wailing. See, I had a conversation with God the other day, and I don't totally agree on the idea of love, but the idea of loving you gotta be God sent because you was what I prayed for. All this bad energy from my last relationship, you was what I saged for. I mean, sex is cool, but you don't know intimacy until you get prayed on. I heard someone say talk is cheap, but these lips got expensive taste. And my appetite for love ain't subject to